Hello, 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 everybody. Christy here, version of you 2.0. I am just going to check in with you here. I'm actually jumped on a minute early. I was kind of excited. Day 3. Yeah, we're live. So I'll just give you some time to jump on. Day 1, you learned about some really astounding statistics, right? We learned that 1 out of 5 Canadians is considered obese. We learned that by 2026, 50% of the US population will be considered obese, and within a 10-year span, within a 5-year span, I think it was, or by 2030, so 4-year span, that percentage will actually go up to 60%, that it will rise an additional 10%. That is insane, as far as I'm concerned. We learned that, the weight loss industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that despite the fact that people are really trying hard to focus on their health, that in reality, when they invest in the weight loss industry's programs, plans, and exercise prescriptions, that there is an 80% chance of them gaining the weight back, but not just gaining the weight back, ending up with what's called the weight rebound effect, which essentially means that the person gains the weight back that they had lost, but also more weight back. And the reason for that is because in the study that I cited to you from The Biggest Loser, what they realized was in monitoring them for, I think it was the 6 years post-show, that despite having a cook cooking their food, despite having a trainer training them, following a proper regimen with the healthy eating and, the healthy living with the exercise, that their metabolism ended up becoming slower. And we understand that now through the days that we've been working together, that that's because we all have unique archetypes. We all have different predominances of the hormone that's produced in our body, and that creates specific self-sabotaging behaviors that we lean on, specific personal traits that we have, and specific times of the day in which we can eat our food, in which we can tolerate exercise. And when we don't know those particular hormones in our body, when we don't understand our uniqueness, and we try and define ourselves based on the weight loss industry itself and their generalized templated programs, what happens is we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. We're making the assumption that if we go and work out early in the morning and do a high intensity workout, that by doing that we're going to lose the weight, because that's what the industry says. If you reduce the amount of food that you're consuming, right, you reduce your caloric intake and you increase your energy output, you increase your exercise, then you should go ahead and be able to lose the weight. Unfortunately, that's not what happens. What happens is when we follow these templated plans, we end up causing more trauma to our metabolisms. We end up increasing our cortisol levels in our body. We end up increasing inflammation in our body. We end up making ourselves more tired. We end up in this cyclical effect where we sabotage ourselves because we don't even feel good about going to the gym. We wake up the next morning and we don't feel recovered. And again, I talked to you about the 21 different major diets that exist today, but what you're starting to learn in these couple of days so far is that those particular diets are only best suited for specific archetypes. So you learned yesterday that the Mesomorph does really well on the ketogenic diet, whereas the Ectomorph does not. The Ectomorph does really well on an intermittent fast. The Mesomorph can't do that. They need way more food throughout the day and they need specific types of food in order to prevent them from ending up with chronic fatigue, right? So I'm really hoping that you're investing your time and really paying attention to what these couple of days have to offer you. And I told you my purpose was twofold. One, so that you can really understand what it is that I can offer you if you decide to register into my Weight Loss Accelerator program. It really does dive into your particular unique epigenetics, right? There is no me telling you what to do based on, 30 years of following the weight loss industry, which was a mistake that I'd been making. Now, the plan is dictated based on your stress levels, based on your window of tolerance in terms of, what you're willing to accept for change, based on your hormones and the predominant hormone that's released for certain times of the day. So now we can get really, really, really granular and specific as to a weight loss program that serves you. That would be very different than the weight loss program that would best serve me. I talked to you about that I have a cellular support product because, as much as we want to lose weight, we also need to get healthy first to lose the weight, at least to expedite results. Because when our hormones are out of whack, it's really hard to lose the weight. So using the cellular support product, which helps to, reverse the signs of aging, increases energy, increases sleep quality, improves hormone modulation. Certainly because you're sleeping better allows you to handle stress better, but it also reduces inflammation and improves your gut health. Well, when you can digest your foods properly and absorb the vitamins and minerals, then you can also elevate your energy that way as well. But not only that, this cellular support supplement also helps you to recover after workouts. It also increases the fatty acid oxidation, which means it helps you to use the fat that is on your body as a source of fuel. And then I got into the first two archetypes, which was the Mesomorph and the Ectomorph. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do see that a couple of you have joined me. Just going to open up Zoom real quick. I don't see any comments, so go ahead and say hi. Tell me who's here. And if you've been watching so far, let me know what you've learned so far. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. See if I get the right slide. I didn't adjust them yesterday. There we go. Fantastic. And I'm just going to pull the chat for anybody who's joining us on Zoom over as well. I'll just say hi as I always do to make sure that that shows up for you. Fantastic. Okay. So I've already started to get into, some of the summary of what we learned yesterday. So I'm just going to go into just a couple of the details really quickly with you. But one of the interesting facts from yesterday was the Mesomorph needs to eat 5 times a day. And they do well on that high-fat ketogenic diet. While the Ectomorph has more of that vegetarian-style diet and would do well with an intermittent fast where they could actually skip breakfast. One excels in high-stress environments like the ER, which is the Mesomorph. And the other, the Ectomorph, excels in the calm space like a therapeutic office. And lastly, one typically reacts before thinking, while the other thinks far too long before reacting. So what do you think so far? Do you know anybody? I asked you this yesterday. Do you know anybody who's a Mesomorph or an Ectomorph? Do you think you fit into one of those first two archetypes that you've learned? Does it allow you to better understand those personalities? I mentioned yesterday that for the Mesomorph, a lot of them are labeled with ADD or ADHD, when in fact, it's literally in their DNA to move. they need space to move. They also need fuel on a regular basis. So they need to move and they need to eat. If you give them that, then they will definitely be able to thrive and stay focused on a task for a longer period of time. Love this. Hello, Christina. How are you doing, baby girl? It's good to have you here. I think, because you took this last time, I think you said that you thought maybe you were a mesomorph, but then you were on the fence. Did you end up figuring out kind of where you were? Let me know. You always rock. Thank you. So do you. Let me know where you think you are with the archetypes. And obviously you're here because, you know, there's more information that you wanted to gather, but let me know if you think that you in the end were the mesomorph. I'm curious. And obviously we can talk about that further. I know that was something that you wanted to reach out to me about before as well. All right, so where am I? Okay. So these two polar opposites today are phenomenal. I mean, all 6 archetypes are phenomenal. It's a version of you, right? And you're a phenomenal human being. And the more we know about ourselves, the more that we can connect with that part of ourselves and go, you know what? I tried for years to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to exercise bright and early and do those boot camps and hated every second of it. And now I realize it's because that's not the way my body operates. And I can respect that about myself. It wasn't that I was lazy. It's just my body doesn't work that way. I remember I did that. I'd get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd go to the gym. And by like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you could find me in the corner of some room in fetal position, almost sucking on my thumb, crying, thinking the world was coming to an end because I'd had my fill. Well, now that I've changed my workouts, I still work out in the morning, but it's not as high of an intensity workout, which then gives me the energy I need because I've learned to listen to my body. This is what I'm hoping happens to you as well. So the 2 archetypes, the Endomesomorph, which is our life of the party, and our Ectomorph, which is our introspective observer. So let's get started with the Endomesomorph and their body composition. So for the Endomesomorph, the life of the party archetype, their embryonic development or dermal layer consisted of the mesodermic and the endodermic layers, right? Because we've got the 2 somatotypes squished together there. So where the embryonic development focused on muscle, red blood cells, and gut cells, as well as lung cells, thyroid cells, and digestive cells. Now, this archetype is shorter in stature with shorter limbs and fingers. They have a medium build and bone structure with a rounder face, and this archetype can gain weight a little more easily. Now, for their personality traits, this archetype, actually, their predominant hormone is oxytocin. This is produced in the hypothalamus and is a hormone that is responsible for deep need for connection, love, and support. Makes sense then, right? If there are social butterflies. These archetypes are naturally playful. They enjoy competition, team sports, and motivating games, including recreational activities like throwing a frisbee, soccer, or volleyball. They like to express their feelings and they do so with ease. They also have a deep desire to be able to express their feelings. So they don't do well bottling up their emotions. From a health status perspective, their mental health benefits most from being surrounded by people when they can join groups or participate in events. Therefore, long periods of alone time, working independently on projects from beginning to end may actually create stress, anxiety, and depression. From an exercise prescription standpoint, Exercise suggestions include activities that do not follow the same pattern each day, as too much consistency can be monotonous and boring. Interval training, aerobic-based exercise, and anaerobic activity are suggested. However, aerobic-based activity should be limited due to the monotony of the consistency of the movement pattern. Exercise prescription should always include working with a partner. This is for any of the personal trainers who may be watching this. If you are training any of your clients and you start to gauge that they are this particular archetype, you want to be very cognizant that they would do better in partner work, small groups, or in group fitness classes. For those of you who resonate with this archetype, if you're finding it difficult going to the gym because you're kind of going on your own and you're going to the weight room, if you can find a partner to do that, or more of those social engaging type of activities like the group fitness classes would probably help you to stay on track. Days should include regular movement breaks, as this particular archetype does not do well sitting for long periods of time. It's just not ideal for their biomechanics. And their days should include a variety of activities during these movement breaks, such as calisthenics, like full body movements. This could be push-ups, planks, and squats and lunges, for example, if you live in a cubicle. Yoga flow-based classes, if you've got a space that you can do that. Short hikes and stretching are recommended. Now, when we look at this archetype's diet, 3 meals a day plus a citrus fruit in the afternoon. And that's a tip, okay? For any of you who are resonating with this archetype, 3 meals a day are typically kind of a standard number of times to eat, but you want to include a citrus fruit in the afternoon, anywhere between, I think it's like, I want to say 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, but even like 2 to 4 o'clock is probably even better. So it's a little bit removed from lunch. This is to increase your energy. And foods that are rich in essential fatty acids have moderate animal protein, lots of fruits and vegetables, but few grain options are recommended for this archetype. Meal times should be prioritized because this archetype actually forgets to eat. And when they get really hangry, what happens is they'll go to any food type that may not be aligned with their health food choices, especially if they're starving. It's likely that they'll choose food for its taste. So creating healthy versions of classic shepherd's pies, lasagnas, meat pies, soup, stews, and chilies will be of great value. And meal planning and prepping would serve this archetype really, really well. Eating alone can actually decrease their digestive capabilities as well as lower their mood. So this archetype needs to eat with people for all or at least most of their meals. A diet must include various options because bland food, restrictive diets, and the same food types may not be appealing and can also affect their mood. Food is stimulating for this archetype. They really find it fun and enjoy, and they get a lot of joy out of it. They can go several hours between meals, but should eat at regular intervals. So those 3 meals per day, plus that citrus fruit in the afternoon. Now, from a career standpoint, a career type that involves interacting with people, such as a public figure, a presenter, facilitator, or teacher would be great. This archetype can handle diverse personalities and is known for collaborating, advocating for others, and putting the needs of others first. So this could be a self-sabotaging tendency, right? Prioritizing others above their own needs. They do best in positions that offer a wide variety of tasks, and they enjoy learning new skills. Since they have a naturally higher level of serotonin and oxytocin, this body type is usually quite optimistic and craves connection. Now, limitations in a career may include working on a project where the results are not achieved fast enough. Completing tasks alone can also result in uncertainty, a lack of confidence, and even sadness. They may also find it hard to stick to a task, follow the directions, or maintain a routine, and can give up before a project is completed. This archetype may be less patient than the other archetypes and is not great with reoccurring routine. So I'm just going to check in with you as we head into our environment. Still confused. I tend to be a fast thinker and fast on my feet, but I also tend to carry around a few extra pounds of fat and hands down prefer vegetarian. So I guess a question for you then, if we think about yesterday, Christina, and we talk about you're a fast thinker, is that had to be something that you had to adapt? If you were given a timeline for tomorrow, for example, how would that sit with you? Like if you had to make a decision and I said, well, you could do it next week or you can get it done tomorrow. If you get it done tomorrow, you know, here are some of the risks. If you get it done next week, you're going to mitigate most of those risks. You know, what would be, you know, what would you think about doing? Would you kind of ruminate over that and give it much thought? Would you immediately say, you know what, I got this, I'm just going to get this done today? Or would you go, you know what, I'm going to pass and do this next week? The vegetarian diet does typically fall in line with the Endo-Ectomorph. And don't forget that archetype spans all body types and they can suffer from, or they have a predisposition of metabolic disease. So having sugary foods, carbohydrates affects their insulin levels immediately. So they have to be very careful with carbohydrates like quinoa. You know, quinoa has protein in it, but again, because it's considered a higher carbohydrate, it causes, you know, higher blood sugar responses, particularly in the Endo-Ectomorph. So kind of consider that a little bit more. And also ask yourself, when you're eating a vegetarian diet, is that more because of your ethical feelings around that and ethical responsibilities around that, or is that more of a digestive consideration? So I'd like to know more about that as well. All right, let's go ahead and move into environment. So for the environment, we are really talking about a space that has to be socially engaging, right? We're talking about our social butterflies here, our life of the parties. And their home for this archetype is a really great place because this is where they're most comfortable and they can host parties. This archetype is also seen as a chameleon because what ends up happening is, especially when they're in their comfort zones of their home environments, they can move from one conversation to the next where they're dealing with very diverse personalities, and they can easily integrate themselves in those conversations without any issues. It's quite fascinating to watch and observe. They like highly connective touch points. So if not in their own house, then as I mentioned earlier, in some sort of environment where they're socially engaged. This could be at networking events, lunch gatherings, or even coffee socials. Their climate should be temperate with cooler evenings and warmer days, but with no humidity. Drier climates are best. However, this archetype is actually really quite adaptable to most environments. Now, here are some of their preferences. So this social butterfly has a natural affinity to social environments. Therefore, their list of priorities, or Maslow's hierarchy of needs, includes mind first, then social. I'll explain that in a moment. Place, career, fitness, and then food. Now, mine comes first because they need the emotional stability. This is what's most important to this archetype. Since their dominant hormone is oxytocin, trust and deep, meaningful relationships are most important to them. When they feel like they lack trust, this can create negative thought patterns in their mind, which can actually change their behavior. And typically we see that in their motivation. This archetype needs time to process their feelings and must feel like they can share their feelings openly to have successful connections. In my experience in working with my endomesomorphs as clients of mine is that when they don't process their feelings, what ends up happening is they end up going into like a cycle of shaming themselves. So they go into a cycle of self-deprecating talk. So this archetype really needs to be able to digest their feelings, allow themselves to express their feelings, recognize that their feelings are okay, and then have someone that they can safely express their feelings to. This is one of the most important aspects for their mental well-being. Okay, so for those of you who know an endomesomorph, this is a communicator. This is somebody who sometimes they're labeled as passionate. I don't like that. I think when people say they're passionate people, sometimes that word comes across as negative, like you have to tolerate that. It's not that. This is in their DNA. It's like the mesomorph who needs to move. The endomesomorph needs to be able to express themselves. And the rest of us need to be okay with that because we all have our very unique characteristics that when we're understood and appreciated and respected, that makes us really happy. So for these particular archetypes, the very first most important preference for them is being able to express themselves safely. So they need time to process their feelings and must feel like they can share their feelings openly. Now, for fitness-related activities, these can be wide and include anything with people, as I mentioned earlier. Now, CrossFit is actually an excellent activity as they are well-rounded athletes, and CrossFit creates that kind of community. They do not have the same time restrictions with their exercise timing like the Ectomorph that I talked about yesterday. So this particular archetype can actually work out any time of the day. It is suggested that they remove salt and carbohydrates at night to allow for adequate gut digestion and recovery from the day. With a predisposition for high blood pressure, the reduced salt intake is a cautionary measure, while the removal of the carbohydrates at night is due to the higher propensity for weight gain. A clean eating plan for 3 weeks, followed by a week of fewer restrictions. Listen to this. This is another big tip. A clean eating plan for 3 weeks, followed by 1 week of fewer restrictions, would likely keep this archetype from sabotaging or derailing their diet or their healthy eating plan. Okay. So what do you think? You enjoying this? You geeking out? Are you resonating with this particular archetype? Oh, one thing I should mention is that although this archetype is our social butterfly, because mind is first for them, if they don't feel like they can have safe conversations and they haven't come to a place where they can be vulnerable enough to express themselves, then they don't tend to act as extrovertedly as they really are. Okay. So if you're like, I kind of resonate with a lot of those characteristics, but I'm not what I would consider the life of the party. Well, then ask yourself, is it because you just truly haven't come to terms with who you are? That's really not the right words. Allowed yourself to be comfortable enough expressing your feelings. Those are better words. So ask yourself that, have I allowed myself to be vulnerable enough where it's safe for me to do so? And if I have been able to, then maybe this archetype isn't the archetype for you, in which case continue to listen on. But if you haven't been able to do so, then it is possible that this is the archetype for you. And you now need to start creating some of those just intimate, deep connections with just a couple of people where you can comfortably share your stories after you've been able to release some of that yourself, right? You want to get comfortable articulating your feelings and accepting those feelings for yourself, and then having somebody to share those with. Okay. All right. How are we doing? Just checking in. Amazing. This sounds like me. All right, good. Okay. I am moving on now to the ectomorph. So for the ectomorph, this is literally our true ectomorph here. Okay. So they developed in utero with a primary dermal layer being the ectodermic layer. And this had a pronounced focus on skin and the nervous system. They actually have a catabolic metabolism, which means their metabolism doesn't just use fat and sugar as a source of fuel, it uses the muscle. So it uses protein as a source of fuel as well. This is why they have the smallest muscle mass and bone structure. They also have long, lean muscle as well. They have an oval face, narrow jaw, slender fingers, narrow shoulders, and they're generally taller than mesomorphs. So for personality traits, their main characteristics include creative, intuitive, spiritual, and artistic beings. This archetype has an incredible intellectual capacity. They're also very sensitive to stimulation and emotions. They have a natural independency and have an affinity towards aesthetically pleasing spaces. They have a higher sense of awareness due to the vasopressin hormone, which increases the need of vigilance, and higher levels of dopamine, allowing for a greater sense of focus. They have a natural ability to see how things will look before they are completed. Room design, art projects, and handmade designs they can see the end of before they've even started. This archetype is thoughtful, well organized, and prefers stimulation of the mind. They're also powerfully intuitive as they observe everything, including people's mannerisms and word choices. Let's go into their health status. When we talk about their mind, the betterment of their mental health, these archetypes prefer solitude as they're independent thinkers and doers. They're sensitive to overstimulation and the emotional energy of others. Intuitive beings whose mental health dramatically improves when they are creative and detailed. From an exercise prescription standpoint, exercise that stimulates the mind is most motivating and engaging. And this can include yoga, qigong, and tai chi. Having trouble with my words today, sorry. Step classes, choreograph-based classes like ballet, dance, or hip hop are also of interest as it promotes thinking while experiencing the movements. Now, any sport that requires mastering a skill may also be of interest. When we talk about their diet, they actually need to eat well-cooked, warm foods and prefer these over cold, raw foods. They also consume smaller, more frequent meals with snacks in between. As digestion can be an issue, focusing on chewing the food well, consuming pineapple juice before a meal to increase the hydrochloric acid production is recommended. So remember we talked about the macrobiotic diet where, you know, chewing foods 50 times, or the have it like on the tip of my tongue. It's the anyway, it's not there. It's like 4 words come together. And what it is it's a phase that when you get to see your food, smell your food, and taste your food, it actually increases the enjoyment of the food and it helps with digestion. It's there, but it's not coming to me. You know what? You're going to learn about this, I think, tomorrow, and how to deal with these particular circumstances when it's on the tip of your tongue, but you don't have it. So you want to make sure that if you are this particular archetype, that because digestion can be an issue, that you consume foods under low stress conditions. Simpler foods instead of rich foods are also preferred. And this archetype tends to graze throughout the day, eating smaller meals throughout. And they can actually be labeled as snackers as a result of this because they appear to be eating all of the time. Eating well-cooked meats, eating small, frequent meals are suggested. However, interestingly enough, eating salads may not be beneficial because of the inability to digest those the digestive enzymes are just not as available in this archetype. So they find it harder to digest the salads, like the raw vegetables. So cooked vegetables and cooked versions of salads would do better. Now, from a career standpoint, careers best suited include engineering. It was coming to me. Careers best suited include engineering, science, art, graphic artists, photographers, accountants, and editors, as they require detailed focus and to work independently. Ectomorphs are great at being able to put all the pieces, ideas, and concepts together. Now, limitations for this archetype can include their level of sensitivity towards stimulation or external influences, like other people's high emotions. So this is interesting, right? Because the Endomesomorph can sometimes be labeled as passionate. They have this need to, or deep desire to be able to communicate. And the Ectomorph has difficulty sometimes resonating on that same frequency. Now, because of that, though, these two archetypes would work really well together, and I'll go into detail about that. Now, this archetype, the Ectomorph, can also be misperceived as reclusive because they don't always comply with social norms. They need to understand the rules and then accept them as truths first. So they listen for the credibility when someone is speaking to them. So when we're talking about the environment, they prefer warm to hot environments, specifically any space between 80 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit or close to the equator. Soothing, low lit areas and low sensory environments are optimal. A space that allows them to work independently is also recommended. Now let's go into some of their unique preferences a little bit more. So this archetype lists their priorities in this order. Their state of mind is most important, followed by their space, food, social life, and then their level of fitness is last. They need data, logical order, rules, organization, and details to thrive. Can you think of anybody who's like this? They ask a lot of questions. Okay, well, tell me more about this. Well, why are we doing this? And they need to really understand the decision-making process for them to buy into the decision. Again, they may come across as second guessing you, and that's not what's really happening. They're trying to understand it for themselves, right? They're trying to make sense of the logic behind the decision making. So give them the patience and the space to be able to do that. When you do that, they'll probably ask you some really great questions. I am somebody who makes decisions really quickly. And yes and no, that's somewhat true. In my previous position, I was able to make decisions really quickly because it was all in my wheelhouse. It didn't require a great deal of thought. However, I had my right hand woman beside me who was an ectomorph, and she would ask me questions about my decision-making process. And her doing the checks and balances for her to understand allowed me to leverage that so I could see if she was able to poke any holes into my decision-making process. So when you give that type of person this space to understand the logic, what they're able to offer you in return is absolutely profound. So she ended up becoming, my go-to for all major decisions because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. So they need the data, they need the order, the organization, and the details. This ensures that their innate biological fear response is not triggered, while allowing them to focus on their project or task, which plays nicely into their dominant hormone, dopamine. So although their dominant hormone is dopamine, don't forget that the vasopressin hormone, which really creates this sense of alertness, is also a dominant hormone. So because that's their dominant hormone, they're on alert all of the time. So we need to be okay with that. We need to feed that by providing them with the information. When we feed that by providing them with the information, they get the dopamine release, which then means they're going to totally focus on the task that is at hand. Now, to relax, the ectomorph needs to surround themselves in a warm, isolating, low sensory output environment. A sensory deprivation tank is an excellent option for this archetype because it helps to revitalize their bodies and their minds when stressed out and overstimulated. Now, as I mentioned previously, this archetype needs to eat 5 times a day with foods that have fat and carbohydrate. Short breaks after eating will improve digestion. So eat your food, take a break. Don't go right back into the works, particularly at lunch. When most of us will eat at our desk, this does not work for the ectomorph archetype. So taking a short break after eating will improve digestion, as this body type needs to stay relaxed to digest food adequately. Remember, they don't have that same level of digestive enzyme capability, especially with raw foods. So a beautiful summary of the endomesomorph and the ectomorph. We have our extrovert versus our introvert. And these archetypes, which are opposite in nature, when they combine their talents, do so well together. The social butterfly of the endomesomorph naturally pulls attention onto them, which the ectomorph appreciates because they want little attention or spotlight. Now, the ectomorph dials into detail and sees an end result even before a project has started, to which the endomesomorph appreciates because they can't be bothered to pay attention to that much minutia in the detail. The endomesomorph thinks mainly from their heart, while the ectomorph thinks from their mind. The endomesomorph needs to watch their calorie consumption and carbohydrate intake, while the ectomorph needs to eat often while paying very close attention to their digestive system, as when they are stressed, their digestive system shuts off. Now, this is probably one of my most favorite parts. I don't know why, but the celebrities. I always found this part the most interesting. So the celebrities of the endomesomorph are Britney Spears, Nicki Minaj, and Kim Kardashian. Now, the endomesomorph predominantly has the rounder face, which can be seen in the face shape of Kirsten Dunst. Celebrities with the ectomorph body type include Gwyneth Paltrow, Bella Hadid, and Anna Hendrick. They tend to have longer, square-ish jaws, as per the face shapes of Nicole Kidman, Winona Ryder, and Violetta Cometian. She's a professional ballet dancer. So what do you think? Yeah, the citrus in the afternoon, total key, not joking. I would say you'll know, like whatever time in the afternoon where you have that slump, where we typically go for the extra cup of coffee, or when you have your sugar craving, if you have a sugar craving, have the citrus fruit. That is the timing. The window is usually between 1 and 4, but you know, I'm going to assume you're probably between 2 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon if I had to take a guess, Christina. But let me know if I'm off. The more I know about you, the better. Ah, I love this. Okay. So that's it. Tomorrow, we're going to discuss what is next for you in your personal shrink your waistline and expand your mind journey, while diving into your subconscious mind to get better acquainted with why we sabotage ourselves. So who do you know that is a social butterfly and fits perfectly into the Endomesomorphic archetype, or the introverted, introspective Ectomorph? Where do you think you fit so far? Of the 4 archetypes that you've learned so far, do you resonate with one of them predominantly? If you have not heard your archetype, please do not worry. We still have 2 more that we will be covering: the Endomorph and the Meso-Ectomorph. Let me know in the comments what you think. Remember, I do have a handout for you. I'll put that in the comments again as a link for you to opt in to receive the handout. And if you're really interested in learning more about the Weight Loss Accelerator program, now's the time. I'm going to be talking about it tomorrow. But if you want to book a call with me, you want to book that call right now, because while you're in this workshop, while you're one of my VIPs, I'm extending an amazing bonus that only you have access to. So, you know, if you have questions for me and you think you want to act on this amazing bonus, which is a financial bonus, then you're going to want to go ahead and book a call with me so that we can get you in before the deadline, which is Sunday. 11:59 p.m. is the end of the bonus. So I'll go ahead and add the book with me link in there as well. But let me know what you think so far. I improve my workshop based on your questions, comments, concerns, and feedback. So I would love to hear from you. If you're watching this on the replay, you're either watching this in Facebook or you're watching this from the comforts of your home via email, in which case all you have to do is click the reply button and ask me questions that you may have. I am available to you. This is why I'm offering you this free workshop. I want to give you as much value and support as you can possibly get. We're in a brand new year where you are making health-related decisions right now, and I want you making the right decisions. It is so easy to turn to our old Band-Aid solutions, which if you're watching this, you know doesn't work. You may have lost the weight, but if you're watching this, it's because you haven't kept the weight off. There is something about your health that you are not happy with, which is why you are here with me. So this is designed to provide you with that value so that you understand that you have other options. Anyway, I will get off my soapbox. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. As always, here's to showing up for you. Bye.